Curtis. Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to our September BEADS Provider and Case Manager, which is now our bi-monthly webinar. My name is Heather Dane, and I am the Chief Program Officer here at BEADS. And so I will be going through the slide deck with you this afternoon, in addition to Jessica Harlan-York, who is the Chief Operating Officer within DDARS. And so her and I will be sharing some information and updates with you throughout the next hour, but feel free, we will try to answer some questions if we have some time, but please feel free to include your email with your questions. So if we cannot get to your specific questions, we can reach back out to you individually to do so. So before we get started, just want to go over a couple of housekeeping items. To use live captions, you can turn on live captions and subtitles by selecting the captions subtitles on in your video controls. And you can change the caption language by selecting settings and then captions and subtitles and choose the language you would like to use. If you want to ask a question, you can select the Q&A on the right side of the screen. You can type your questions into the box and then select send. So just as a reminder, your questions will only be visible to Jessica and I as the presenters, and questions will be answered as time permits. So to sign in for today's meeting, we have published an announcement in that Q&A box on the right side of your screen. And so under that featured list, you'll find the link for the sign-in sheet. So click on the link and complete the form and submit. So that you will, if you fill that out, you will receive a certificate of attendance that will have the title and date of today's meeting and an electronic signature. So please know we cannot accommodate special requests for certificates of attendance. In addition to that link in the featured list, we also have a number of other links in there for you to be able to access. So one is for you to register for our DDARS announcements. If you have not already done so, you can click that link and register for our announcements, which will provide you with any updates and information that you need as a case manager or provider using waiver services or BEAD services for that matter. Any policy questions, you can contact beads.help@fssa.in.gov. And Jessica will discuss the Open Futures Learning opportunity. She will just kind of give you a reminder and some updates on that. And there's a link in there for you to click to be able to sign up for that opportunity, as well as we're going to give you some updates around the innovation pilot projects. And so there's a link to the guide for more information about those. So with that, we will kind of jump right in. So we have a lot of things that we are going to cover on our agenda. So as you can see, we're just going to give some general updates and guidances around the DSP, wage increase clarifications, our systems consolidation project. I'm going to talk a little bit about risk plans and assessments, some updates around the federal public health emergency, some reminders around timelines with the statewide transition plan, updates and reminders around the innovation pilot project, as well as EBV updates. Jessica will talk about solicitation and what that means for providers and case managers in BEAD services. Also going to talk about the DSS report, and we will do our feature section of incident reporting, the Did You Know? And so some good information there. She will also give you some updates around activities around NCI, which is the National Core Indicators, and some reminders around our current mandatory training, and then the open future learning opportunity that we have out there. So as you all remember, we had a DSP wage increase in last legislative session, and so that was put into our waiver amendment, and we have a lot of information out there about what those calculations should look like. And so we have recently got some questions around that and wanted to provide some clarifications that non-DSP staff providing coverage are excluded from the DSP wage rate calculation for providers. So DDARS does not require non-DSP staff to be included in the wage calculation for time that they spent on DSP service delivery. So just wanted to make sure that providers were clear that those calculations do not include non-DSP staff. So we will be updating our FAQ, and that should be ready for release within the coming days. That should be coming out very soon. And so watch for announcements, and we will send out an announcement with a link to that updated FAQ that explains those calculations and non-DSP staff a little bit more. Wanted to provide just a quick update around our systems consolidation project. So as you are all probably aware, this is a project we have been working on for some time to really consolidate the number of systems that we use in an effort to streamline and make our systems more efficient for providers and for case managers. And so our BEADS portal 2.0 is slated to go live in late fall. And so we are very excited about that and about some of the features and added things that will be happening with that, and hope that it will allow all of your work to go a little more smoothly. And so just know that's still slated for late fall. And one of the things that we are really excited about is that providers will be able to share information about their company that will appear on the choice list. So they will have like 140 character blurb that they can put on about their company. So when individuals and families are provided a choice list, they will no longer see just the name of the company, but they will be able to see a blurb that you as a provider have chosen, and you will also have the ability to update your company profile on a regular basis. So it's going to be those kinds of enhancements that we hope will help you in your business model, but also will help individuals and families when they are trying to choose a provider that is right for them. So we wanted to just talk a little bit about risk plans and assessments. And so this continues to just be an area that teams continue to ask a lot of questions about and work through different situations and scenarios. And so, I think it's important to remember, that exposure to risk is really just a natural part of life. And so it's only through making choices and developing good judgment that we all learn and mature. And risk management emphasizes instruction and the development of strategies and safeguards geared specifically to the individual to manage reasonable risk whenever possible. So, thinking about and identifying and addressing unreasonable risk should be respectful of the individual's rights while addressing competency and capacity to make informed choices. So the determination of risk should include those who know the individual best and be based on the understanding of any cultural and linguistic issues and the team should strive to balance the individual's right to take risks while supporting the individual in areas where there may be an elevated risk. So anytime we are talking about risk, a person-centered approach to effective risk management begins with assessment and service planning centered around the individual's needs and preferences. So an individual must be involved in all aspects of the HCBS waiver services, and that includes the right to make choices, even potentially unhealthy or unsafe ones, and the way in which risks are mitigated. So the individualized support team, including the individual, is charged with assessing an individual's potential risk. So that risk management should be a continual evaluation of the individual and circumstances. And what we kind of have here as the graphic is representative of like a plan, do, study, act model. And so just kind of showing how risk management should be that continual evaluation, and how risk management becomes that process or that continual process for improving the quality of life for the individual. So as potential risks are identified, the individualized support team should be mindful of the number of risk mitigation plans that are being considered. So when there are multiple or a multitude of risk mitigation plans, essentially it de-emphasizes the heightened risk of one or more areas. Instead, the individualized support team should consider if other methods are being employed that address the potential risk without the need for another plan. So additionally, the IST should not institute a risk mitigation plan based solely on an individual's diagnosis or the way that they communicate. So a diagnosis or a communication, a way a person communicates, is not a risk. However, the individual may have physical issues due to a diagnosis that present a potential risk. So the team should clearly identify what the concern is so that if a risk mitigation is needed, appropriate strategies are implemented. So it's important also that teams remember that an individual with an intellectual or developmental disability has the right to participate in the activities of their choosing. And so, however, in some of those cases, there are barriers and potential risks that can be a barrier. So through the risk assessment process, the potential risks and barriers are identified, and the team should use the information to develop and implement proactive measures to meet the needs of the individual and remove as many barriers as possible. Through this process, the team develops better communication, aligns plans with all providers, and provides the direct support professionals with a clear protocol. And so through that clear protocol, it is also important to remember that the PCISP and the risk plans are within alignment. So,
hey Heather, I had one question come in that
yes,
just might be a good place to answer. Someone had asked, and this goes back to the previous slide, but will choice lists have a referral email for families?
Yes, so I believe there will be a place for, I'm not sure if there will be an email, to be honest. I know there will be a place for a website, for a phone number, an address, the name of the company, and then the blurb. But honestly, I'm not sure if there is a place for an email, but we can check to make sure, because I think that would be an excellent add, if not.
Sounds good. I can even do, might be able to check on that now with someone who might, because I'm not sure about that either, but we'll definitely check.
Yeah, good question.
Good question.
So also just wanted to, I know there's always questions around, is the federal public health emergency still in effect? And what about Appendix K flexibilities? So those are still in effect. The federal government has not put an end to that public health emergency just yet. And so, so therefore all Appendix K flexibilities are still in place. So providers and case managers are reminded, you should only be using those flexibilities within the criteria outlined within Appendix K, and really should be working with the individual, family, and team to determine those long-term solutions. Because eventually, this will end at some point. And so we would just need to make sure that we are preparing individuals and families for what services will look like when those Appendix K flexibilities are no longer an option for them. So just a reminder around the statewide transition plan. So we've discussed this several times, but we are coming up to our deadline where we have to ensure full compliance of the settings rule by March 17, 2023. And so the settings rule requires that all settings in which Medicaid HCBS are provided are integrated in and support full access to the greater community, which include things like providing opportunities to seek employment and work in competitive integrated settings, to engage in community life and control personal resources. It ensures individuals receive services in the community at the same degree of access as individuals not receiving Medicaid home and community-based services, and that they are selected by the individual from among setting options, including non-disability specific settings. So with this deadline quickly approaching, we have began some engagement activities and efforts associated with those non-residential remediation process. And back in July, we started reaching out directly to all the non-residential day habilitation providers that were previously required to submit a transition plan in response to their initial site assessment findings. And in preparation, those non-residential day habilitation providers were asked to be reviewing their existing plans and ensuring that any updates to compliance activities were completed for their service settings. So as we kind of resume this validation process, we will be required to submit any outstanding materials demonstrating compliance. So we're going to need updated policies, procedures, and so we're asking that all of those non-residential provider plans and non-residential day hab providers to submit those outstanding materials by October of 2022. And so you should have some direct communication with our staff, who is kind of sharing information with you about what that looks like for your agency. And then we will be sure to review and validate all the submitted information no later than January. And so that will allow us, if there are any last minute things that we need to clean up prior to that March deadline, that we have some time to do that and to work with you on that. So, and then lastly, for myself, I wanted to share and remind everybody about the innovation pilot projects. And so I know we have talked a lot about these, but we really want to make sure that providers are taking this opportunity when possible, if this is something that you are interested in. And so this really is funding opportunities for HCBS providers and non-provider community entities and individuals with disabilities and families to really all of those great ideas and approaches and ways that you have always thought, I wish we could. This is a way to really kind of explore and see what that could look like. And so, we can use a lot of these pilot projects to inform HCBS waiver redesign. And so we have been excited that we have been receiving a number of applications. And so I think at this point we have somewhere above, we have like 40 plus at this point of the phase 1 applications received, and this number changes daily though. But providers and community partners and individuals, really are encouraged and not to wait until late September to submit their phase 1 application, because part of that, when you submit your application, you will generally have some conversation with DDAR staff just to kind of explore, what does this idea look like, and are there some opportunities for partnership within your proposal. But so phase 1 is really around the development of providing up to $50,000 for the development of that comprehensive proposal. And so again, this is open to HCBS providers, community partners, individuals with disabilities and families. So that application period ends September 30th. So there's only a couple more weeks to get that in. And again, in the published questions, or in the published Q&A, I put a link in there for the pilot project guide outline, and so which outlines all of the requirements for you. So just a couple of things to point out on this slide. So if providers don't use, or entities don't use all of the $50,000 for development, they can use those, there's some flexibility there, and use those remaining funds for phase 2. And so, but if you do accept the $50,000, you are committing to the development and implementation of the identified and approved project. So to qualify for that initial $50,000 development funds, the applicant must submit the application and meet all the minimum requirements and receive approval from DDARS on the initial IPP concept, and must submit a letter of intent confirming their commitment to utilize those funds to support the development of DDARS approved IPP. Submit a complete IPP no later than December 31st, 2022 if selected for a grant and funds are accepted. Report as needed to DDARS on progress of the IPP development, submit any requested status updates, adhere to instructions in that innovation pilot project guide, and comply with all the audit requirements. So phase 2 of the pilot project, that is when those additional funds specific to the implementation costs of that approved IPP will be considered and distributed. And so additional direction and details on the submission of the full innovation pilot plans will be forthcoming. So just keep in mind, you only have a couple more weeks if you have a project that you would like to submit an application for. Also wanted to send out another reminder around EBV compliance. And so as noted in the IHCP bulletin, there is going to be full enforcement of EBV beginning on or after January 1st, 2023. So there are only a couple of more months for providers to come into compliance with that. And so Indiana Medicaid has continued to allow HCBS provider claims to process through a post and pay status, regardless of EBV specific issues with provider claims. But please keep in mind, it is the expectation and there will be full enforcement of that EBV beginning on or after January 1, 2023. So the IHCP has offered a number of activities such as webinars and other resources to kind of help providers get into compliance for this date to prepare for that January date. But providers should be watching the IHCP bulletin for continued or upcoming activities or opportunities that may become available to them. And also for those providers who are required to implement EBV and would like any assistance in understanding their existing claim status as it relates to EBV, you can contact Virginia Hudson, and that email is on your screen. So these slides will be made available as well as the recording on our website within the next week or so. And so if you're not able to jot this email down quickly, it will be available on our website. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Jessica.
Heather, a couple things. I did put that email in the announcement.
Oh, great.
So if someone can, you can click on that there. I did confirm that the new choice list does have a place for the provider to enter their email. So appreciate that that question, and it does look like that will be available. And it also, as Heather mentioned, will have a place for providers to enter information about their organization. So that is coming. So excited about that. There's one question, Heather, that might be a good place here around telehealth, and in specifically around that flexibility, and is that double checking that there is still access for 6 months after the federal emergency. Can you speak to that at all?
Yeah, so any of the Appendix K flexibilities, so it's important to remember any of the Appendix K flexibilities, they will be in effect until 6 months after the end of the public health emergency. So the telehealth portion there, that was a state, that was under the state flexibilities.
Mm-hmm.
And so what we have done is we have allowed telehealth to continue, or virtual visits to continue through that Appendix K and through the end of that 6 months. But it will be important to remember that those things should be happening at the direction of the individual, that should not be happening at the convenience of the provider, and that it really should be around those kind of parameters that are set around Appendix K. And so we also have issued a number of guidances around the legislation that was passed that allowed for certain Medicaid services, certain licensed Medicaid services to be provided via telehealth. And so that included some of our waiver services and not some of those. And so I would encourage providers to look at our announcements and through our guidance to see as far as specific to the service that you provide.
Thanks, Heather. And I think someone had also mentioned within that around individuals sharing that they would like to receive services, virtually. So I would encourage, if you guys, we would love to talk to people, talk to individuals, talk to families, if there are questions or thoughts around them wanting to receive certain services virtually. So please, share our information, and we're always wanting to talk about, especially with individuals specifically who are receiving those services, and how we can, continue to talk to them about how we can make that better. Okay, I'm going to keep going. We might have some more questions, but I'll keep plugging away here. We also had a question just around the providing the slides. We will, as Heather mentioned, these will be available within a week, usually even faster, if you've missed or you have to take off or you leave early or you arrived late. So one update, or not really an update, just a clarification. We get a lot of questions around solicitation, whether there's a complaint or, someone, sharing that they believe that a provider is soliciting. So I wanted to just point out our specific 460 code around solicitation, and it's 460 IAC 636-2 Code of Ethics. A provider providing services shall not engage in uninvited solicitation of potential clients who are vulnerable to undue influence, manipulation, and coercion. And I really want to point out the word uninvited, as there are certain activities and things that happen that aren't necessarily, solicitation, whether someone posts a job, a posting and says they're looking for, DSPs in this area, things like that. So it's really that uninvited that is in red here is really important when it comes to whether solicitation is occurring or not. So again, just keep this in mind, happy to, if you do find that there's an issue, we want that reported, definitely, but just really pointing out that word uninvited, and it's a little, it can be a little sticky sometimes of whether someone thinks something is solicitation or not. So we're happy if you want to submit a question to BEADS Help or anything like that, or reach out to us if you have a question or you want to talk through to see if something is solicitation. Thanks, Heather. The DSS report. So I wanted to point this out. The DSS report, the 2022 report, is available. I put a link in the announcements as well, so you can go ahead and just click there if you're interested. DSS is a web-based data collection application that's developed by Indiana University's Institute on Disability and Community in collaboration with community rehabilitation providers, Voc Rehab and DDRS. By collecting information about each person receiving day and employment services, DSS helps in monitoring system performance and providing system insights to give state policymakers, local service providers, or to give to local state policymakers, local service providers, and legislatures. The primary objective of this report is to give providers, policymakers, and advocates insight as to where individuals spend their day and what that actually means for them specifically. So I wanted to point this out. This is part, if you are a BEADS provider, when you sign the provider agreement, when you enroll in, to become a provider, you do agree that you will participate in this survey. So I just want to remind everyone of that. Feel free, like I said, to click on this link, take a look, but you are agreeing that you will, take part in this survey, and it's a lot of great information and is used, but as we're looking at services and supports for individuals with intellectual and developmental disabilities. So I just want to send that out as a reminder too, and if you want to take a look at the 2022 report and even previous reports to take a look on that website. Incident reporting. So again, we have recently noticed there are quite a bit of incidences that are reported for a visit to urgent care. So we want to clarify that is not a reportable incident in and of itself. Urgent cares are not considered emergency interventions. So if someone just goes to an urgent care, does not need to be reported as under really an emergency intervention. However, if a visit to an urgent care was the result of an unknown injury, a significant injury, a fall resulting in an injury, then it would be considered reportable. So again, just some clarification. It really is important to think through that. We get a lot of non-reportable incidences. And so just a clarification, as we've seen quite a bit around the urgent care and filing it simply because of that emergency intervention when it's really not considered an emergency intervention. National core indicators. So hopefully everyone out there has heard of national core indicators before. This is a collaborative effort between NASDs, which is I'm going to have a lot of acronyms here, which is the National Association of State Directors of Developmental Disability Services, and HSRI, which is the Human Services Research Institute. And this began in 1997, and the purpose was to support NASD's members, which are state agencies like ourselves, to gather a standard set of performance and outcome measures that can be used to track performance over time, to compare results across states, and to establish national benchmarks. And Indiana has been involved in this for quite some time. We get a lot of really good information around supporting individuals as well as providers. And so a couple things that we are involved in is in-person surveys. And those are face-to-face conversations completed with a minimum of 400 individuals who are 18 years of age or older and receiving at least one paid service from the state. And this would be in addition to case management. And we also have the child family survey, which that is mailed to families who have a child under age 18. with an intellectual and developmental disability living in the family home. The family member with an intellectual and developmental disability must be receiving at least one service in addition to case management. And these are facilitated with Indiana University. And again, just making sure that everyone is aware that we are conducting these surveys. And again, we get a lot of really good information, especially when we can talk to individuals directly, in person, and see what's going well, what are some of the challenges and what are the things that we can continue to improve with our system. And I put another link, Heather, as well in the chat, the announcements. Just again, if you're interested in the Indiana information, we have previous survey results there. You can also look at the national across what all other states have reported. They do a lot, obviously, research, and they combine just to look at some of the trends within the country. Mandatory training. So again, hopefully everyone out there is aware that we have been conducting mandatory trainings for providers. Gosh, I'm trying to think. I think for about a year now. And the most recent training that we had one last week, and then we do 3 of those exact same trainings. We give 3 opportunities for providers to join. It's also open to anyone. It is a focus on modifications, and the individuals and participants will learn about the home and community-based settings rule, modification process, less restrictive alternatives, and the role of the Human Rights Committee. So again, just take note of these dates if you did not participate and you're a provider. And when I say provider, someone from executive level management is required of all providers. Again, we get this question. It's not just a day program. It's not just a residential provider. It's every single provider of a home and community-based setting service needs to participate or must participate in this training. So the 20th and the 28th, those are the next 2 opportunities. So hopefully if you have not registered, we have the registration. I believe Heather put the link on the right side. It's also on our announcement page as well. Open Futures Learning, again, another opportunity that we created for with some of the spending plan money that we were fortunate enough to receive. We have a forms link on here, and again, I know Heather put that link on in the announcements, where you can take advantage of obtaining free accounts for Open Futures Learning, which is a platform that is near and dear to our hearts here at BEADS. We, all of our staff have access to this. They provide a lot of great learning opportunities for direct support professionals, really just around person-centered practices in supporting individuals in our services or in DD services. They also are developing some trainings and guidance for management. So not just really DSP staff, but also for management level staff. So if you take a look at this form, you can apply to receive stipends for DSPs that are going through this. We understand DSPs are very busy, and have not a lot of free time, right, to necessarily take additional training. So we are offering stipends for that time that DSPs are taking to take advantage of this training, as well as if there is some management, is some management, but if there's some time that managers are needing to oversee this and it's extra time, there is some room for a stipend for that as well. So please take advantage of this. I've approved about 12 of these, 12 to 13 so far. Going back and forth, just make sure you're pretty specific. We do ask for specific information in that form, really, especially around the amount. You could be audited potentially on utilizing this. So just making sure that we see if you are asking for, a certain amount, you're explaining to us how you came up with that amount. So again, please take advantage of that. If you have any questions, you can reach out to me or to BEADS Help, and happy to answer any questions. But hopefully people out there want to take advantage of this. We are also looking at providing some subscriptions to individuals and families. So stay tuned for that. Heather and I are working on that behind the scenes and putting together some information to be able to release that. So also very exciting. So stay tuned for that. And let me see. Heather, did I miss any questions or anything?
Nope, that's no questions.
Okay.
So just as a final reminder, if you haven't already signed into today's meeting, you can do so at the link in that Q&A box, and you will receive a certificate of attendance. So with that, I believe that is the end of our presentation. Thank you everyone for joining us. And as Jessica said, any questions or problems that arise, please reach out to Beads Help or Jessica or myself, and we're always happy to support you.
Thank you guys. Have a great September and see you in a couple months.
Thank you guys.
Thanks.